Kiwi. It's 11 minutes past 8 now.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Talking politics with Russell Norman.
Yes, talking politics indeed. Russell Norman joins us this morning. Where from this morning, Russell?
I'm in Wellington this morning, Wammo.
Okay, you're not on a river at the moment, because last time we were talking, you're about to head off on this old Dirty River rafting tour.
Yep. Well, we've done a couple of rivers. Had to cancel one because of the rain. Heading up north tomorrow to do the Kawakawa.
Okay. Where have you been this week?
This week, the Waiho, which is the river that drains, or rather runs, but it's more like a drain into the Firth of Thames, near Thames. It comes out of the Waikato off the Hauraki Plains there.
What was it like?
Well, at the very top of the river, there's a thing called the Blue Spring near Putaruru. And the Blue Spring is literally blue because the water there is so pure, because it comes out of a natural spring, that it actually is blue to look at. It's quite startling. And there's this beautiful river up there. It's right at the top of the river, and it's so clean. You can see the clear kind of gravel at the bottom, white gravel, and see the trout swimming around.
And that's where you started?
Yeah, and then we followed it. We didn't start rafting there just to kind of look at it, and then we got into the river at Te Aroha. And travelled down for 2.5 hours from there. There'd been quite a bit of rain, so the river was pretty full and incredibly brown. And, of course, all the effluent had been washed into the river, as it is with heavy rain events. And so it was in a really shocking state, really.
So you saw it almost probably at its worst, then?
Yeah, because a lot of district health boards now have pretty standard warnings in place, which is don't swim in rivers and don't swim in marine environments after heavy rain events. Because if you go to the beach after heavy rain event, the problem is all the shit gets washed down the river and ends up in the marine environment, and you can get sick just from swimming at the beach. So, yeah, the rivers are in pretty bad shape after heavy rain events.
Did you get much attention while you were there? I mean, were you able to highlight some of those issues with that river, with the local population?
Yeah, we have a bit. It was actually absolutely driving with rain. So it was there weren't hundreds of people out and about, to be fair, because it was so incredibly difficult weather conditions. But we've drawn quite a bit of attention to it. I mean, the Environment Waikato, the regional council, they've basically a report that says that if this carries on, then we'll create a dead zone in the Firth of Thames. That is a zone where nothing lives. Because there'll be so much nutrient go out there, you get enormous algal blooms, which will at a certain point collapse, and then they'll suck up all the oxygen out of the water, and nothing will be able to live there.
Yeah.
They have these dead zones in the headwaters of where the Mississippi comes out into the ocean and stuff like that. We don't have any dead zones probably in New Zealand at the moment, but the Firth of Thames is up there, and of course the Firth of Thames is connected to the Hauraki Gulf and Auckland.
Some would say Lake Ellesmere in Canterbury is pretty dead.
Yeah, I mean, Lake Ellesmere, yeah, that's true. But in terms of a kind of marine environment, there's lots of, obviously, freshwater environments that are in, you could consider pretty close to a dead zone. But in terms of saltwater environments, we don't have them as such yet. So this would be the first contestant because we've basically mistreated the land so badly on the Hauraki Plains, and all the sediment and effluent and nutrient drains through those rivers, like the Piako as well.
So you're highlighting some of these issues, some of these rivers. Is there any interest from the government in sorting out some of these rivers?
Well, they have acknowledged there's a problem. I mean, after the last government basically just stood by while it all happened, and watched the whole dairy intensification with its dramatic impacts on water quality and did nothing about it. So the current government has said they care about it, want to do something about it. They've set up a land and water forum to look at it, which involves environment groups, industry, and iwi. So we'll see, the recommendations that come out of that, and also we'll see what action the government takes. I mean, some of the councils, like the Matamata Piako District Council, has tried to implement what they call the kaitiaki, or a conservation zone, whereby 20 metres either side of the Waiho it had to be left so that it could grow back, it could revegetate, because it was an enormous kahikatea forest on the Hauraki Plains.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Federated Farmers challenged them in the court, and so it's all ended up caught up in negotiations and so forth. But, because obviously the feds oppose anything to clean up rivers. So it's kind of as a matter of course. And so there are people trying to do stuff, but obviously they're pushing up against some pretty powerful vested interests.
Yeah. Russell, there was a deadline on Sunday for the government to sign on the dotted line for the Copenhagen Accord. Did the government sign on the dotted line as they should have?
Well, what they've agreed to is to put in the extremely qualified commitment that they took to the Copenhagen conference, which is that they'll do 10 to 20% reductions on 1990s, but only if certain conditions are met. And one of the conditions is that they don't have to do any of the reductions in New Zealand, but that they can buy carbon credits from overseas. And of course, countries all around the world are going, well, the problem is that if everyone does that, nobody will cut emissions. And so other countries are trying to impose limits on how much of the carbon reduction you can purchase overseas versus actually reduce domestically. And so New Zealand's conditional commitment is conditional on having no limits on that, which of course is a terrible condition and completely irresponsible.
And effectively, really nothing's being done.
Yeah, that's right. So instead what they're doing is they're taking your taxes, Wammo, and they're investing them in brand new spanking motorways like the Holiday Highway they want to put up north of Auckland, which will cost billions of dollars, and all the other motorways, so that we can increase car use, greenhouse emissions, fossil fuel use, and congestion. And that's their strategy to actually increase greenhouse emissions.
Sounds like a hell of a deal.
It's brain dead, mate. It's brain dead. It's like they're living in the 1950s. Oh, what should we do? Oh, let's build motorways. Yeah. Except it doesn't work because all it does is increase car use, increase fossil fuel use, increase greenhouse gas emissions, and it doesn't really solve congestion anyway. And then when oil prices go up, of course everyone's desperate for decent public transport, as we saw last time during the big oil, when the price of petrol went through the roof. And of course it's not available because the last government and this government, aren't investing in public transport.
Yeah.
It's miserly compared to the investments in roads and motorways. So, only the Greens are the ones who keep plugging away to say the priority should be public transport, walking and cycling.
Russell, Jeanette Fitzsimmons has stepped down last week as an MP, and that was effective straight away. New blood now into the fray, into the Parliament. Tell us about the new chap.
Gareth Hughes. He's been working on the sign-on campaign for Greenpeace and been involved in GE activism at various times, including getting dressed up as Ronald McDonald in order to put pressure on McDonald's to get GE out of their food, which they were successful with. So he's got a strong Green background. He's a father of one. He's 28. He's a great guy, and we're really looking forward to having him as part of our team.
Was there any kind of initiation ceremony?
I don't know, Wammo. What do you reckon?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it really is, baptism of fire. Though I'd imagine the first day in Parliament in the debating chamber.
Yeah, well, I mean, what he'll do is when he first gets down here, he'll have a day or two to just watch proceedings, and then he'll deliver his maiden speech.
Yeah.
So that will be his first real speaking opportunity in the House.
Any advice you'll be giving?
Well, I'll speak from the heart. It's like it's the speech where you say why you've come here, who you are, where you're from, and what you plan to do. So I just think speak from the heart about why you really come to this place, because Greens go into politics because they want to change things, not because they support the status quo like the other two parties. Do you ever look back at your own speech and sort of tick the boxes next to it, and say, oh, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Oh, I'm not doing what I said I would do there. Yeah, I do actually. Probably once a year I have a bit of a look at it and try to make sure I remember why I came to that place, because that place can change you. And the danger for a party like the Greens, which is there to make progressive change, is that we become part of the institutions and lose track once you're inside an institution like that. So it is really important, I think, for the Greens to make sure we stay connected with the community, and stay connected with our vision. And so that's a useful thing to do.
All right, on that note, thanks very much, Russell.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, that's Russell Norman, co-leader of the